Imagine this. You're 20 years old, a widow, and utterly alone. Outside, the world is a fortress of ice. The temperature has plunged to minus 71 degrees Celsius, a cold so profound it can freeze your breath in midair. This isn't a movie. This was the terrifying reality for Agrafena, abandoned in the vast, unforgiving wilderness of Yakutia, the heart of the Siberian taiga. Her story is one you won't easily forget, a raw testament to the will to survive against impossible odds. For Agrafena, the silence of the snow-covered forest was deafening. Days blurred into a desperate cycle of trying to stay warm, to keep the encroaching frost at bay. Her small, isolated cabin offered little comfort against the brutal cold that seeped through every crack. Food was running out. The gnawing hunger was a constant, terrifying companion, second only to the bone-chilling cold. Hope was a flickering candle in a hurricane. She knew that without a miracle, the taiga would claim her, just as it had claimed so many others, surrounded by miles of desolate, frozen landscape, with no one to call for help. And no path leading to safety, she was faced with a stark choice. Surrender to the elements, or fight back. One morning, peering through a frosted window pane, she saw it. A dark shape moving against the white expanse. A moose? But this wasn't just any moose. It was a giant, an ancient king of the forest. Its sheer size was intimidating, a creature of immense power and wild spirit. For anyone else, it would be a majestic sight. For Agrafena, it was a lifeline. It was meat. It was survival. The thought was both terrifying and electrifying. Hunting such an animal was a monumental task for a seasoned hunter, let alone a young woman weakened by cold and hunger. But in that moment, she found a resolve she never knew she had. This was her only chance. Her husband had been a hunter. She had watched him, learned from him, absorbing his knowledge of the forest and its creatures. Now, she would have to rely on those fragmented memories. She found his old, heavy rifle. The cold metal burned her bare hands as she checked it, her fingers clumsy and stiff. Each movement was a struggle, sapping her precious energy. She gathered what little gear she had, a knife, a small axe, and worn-out fur clothing that felt pitifully thin against the Arctic blast. As she stepped out of the cabin, the air hit her like a physical blow, stealing her breath. The snow was deep, sometimes up to her waist, making every step a monumental effort. The hunt had begun. Tracking the moose was grueling. Its massive tracks were easy to follow in the fresh snow, but the animal moved with a speed and endurance she could barely match. The forest was a labyrinth of snow-laden pines and frozen rivers. She had to be careful. A wrong step could mean falling through thin ice or getting lost in the disorienting whiteout. Ours turned into a day, then another. The cold was relentless, seeping into her bones. Her body screamed in protest, her muscles ached, and her mind was clouded with exhaustion and doubt. Was she chasing a ghost? Was this a futile effort that would only hasten her end? More than once, she collapsed into the snow, the temptation to just close her eyes and let the cold take her almost overwhelming. But then, the image of the moose, the symbol of life, would flash in her mind, and she would force herself back onto her feet. Finally, after days of relentless pursuit, she cornered it. The giant moose stood in a small clearing, its breath pluming in the frigid air. It was magnificent and terrifying. Its massive antlers were like the branches of a dead tree, and its dark eyes watched her with an ancient, untamed intelligence. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the hunter and the hunted, two beings fighting for survival in a world that wanted them both dead. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the vast silence. Her hands were shaking, not just from the cold, but from adrenaline and fear. She had one shot. If she missed, the moose would either charge her or disappear back into the endless forest, and her chance for survival would be gone forever. Lifting the heavy rifle was an agony. Her arms felt like lead, her fingers numb. She tried to steady her breathing, to calm the tremor in her hands. Remembering her husband's words, become one with the rifle. Let your breath guide the shot. She aimed, the iron sights blurring and clearing with her strained vision. The world narrowed to that single point, the space between her and the moose. She squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle shot shattered the Arctic silence, echoing through the trees. For a moment that stretched into an eternity, nothing happened. Then the giant creature shuddered, stumbled, and with a final great sigh, it fell. Silence returned to the forest, but this time it was different. It wasn't the silence of despair, but the silence of triumph. Agrafena stood there, gasping, the rifle dropping from her numb fingers. Tears froze on her cheeks as a wave of overwhelming relief washed over her. She had done it. She had faced the beast of the taiga and won, but the work was far from over. Now came the even more arduous task of butchering the massive animal in the freezing cold and hauling the meat back to her cabin. It was a brutal, bloody job that took all of her remaining strength. Each trip back and forth, dragging heavy cuts of meat through the deep snow, was a marathon of its own. Back in the relative warmth of her cabin, with a fire roaring and the promise of food for months to come, Agrafena finally allowed herself to rest. She had not only survived the cold and the hunger, but she had stared into the face of her own mortality and refused to blink. She had transformed from a grieving widow into a true survivor, a daughter of the taiga who had earned her place in this harsh, beautiful world. Her story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest, coldest, and most hopeless of circumstances, the human spirit can find a way not just to endure, but to prevail. Agrafena's fight for life in the Siberian wilderness is more than just a survival tale. It's an incredible story of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable will to live. Thank you so much for watching. If you were moved by Agrafena's incredible journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more unbelievable true stories from the edge of the world. Let us know in the comments what you think is the most essential skill for survival. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.